Hi everyone. So today we're talking about the chain rule for partial derivatives. Now, before you get scared away by the name, I know it sounds like it's going to be super complicated, but what I would say is if you are okay with partial derivatives and you've done lots of practice, then the chain rule hopefully shouldn't be too much tougher. So we're going to start with a formula and then we're going to do examples to make sense of it. Okay, so we start with z, which is a function of x and y. We've already seen lots of examples of those. But now x and y are also functions of t. Then you have the formula that dz by dt is basically you're going to take the partial with respect to x. So this would kind of be like when we used to do f little x. That's what that means. And then this one, pretend that it's x subscript t. So it's, I know the notation is bad, but that's sort of how it would be. So it's x with respect to t, and then this one would be z with respect to y. So it's kind of like the f little y that we've been doing so far. And then this one would be y little t. Again, the notation doesn't quite correspond to it, but that's how I would understand it. So with keeping this formula in mind, we're going to have to do an example to see how this comes together. Alrighty, so here's a function z, which is equal to xy minus y cubed. And then in these questions, they also give you what x and y are equal to. So they may not tell you in the question to use a chain rule, but whenever they give you a function z, which has two variables, and then each of those variables has its own function, that's kind of an indication that we're talking about the chain rule. And the question is find dz by dt when t is equal to 2. All right, so I've written out the formula for you right there. Again, that's what we did on the other screen. We're going to take the partial of z with respect to x. So what I'm going to do is go to the z function right there, and I'm going to treat x as a variable, y as the constant, kind of like the f subscript x that we did before. Okay, so I'm just going to erase that to move that out of the way. With respect to x, so we've got xy, so the x becomes a 1, and then times the y is attached to it, it's being multiplied, so we keep the y there, and then minus, and now the y cube becomes a 0 because it's with respect to x, there's no x in it. And then the dx by dt, we're going to go to the function at the top, which is x equals t squared minus 1 right there. Okay, and we're going to take that with respect to t. So basically, you're just taking the derivative of it. Nothing too big. That's 2t. Plus, and now we're going to go back to the z function. And then in this case, we're going to do it with respect to y. So the x is a constant. It stays where it is. The y becomes a 1. The derivative of y is 1. And then minus 3y squared for that part. Then we're multiplying it by the derivative of y with respect to t. So I'm taking the y equals 3t cubed, and I'm taking the derivative of that with respect to t, and that becomes 9t squared. Okay, so there's the derivative, and I'm just going to simplify it a little bit. So this is just y times 2t plus x minus 3y squared times 9t squared. Now, the only thing is it's asking us for when t is equal to 2. So what should I do? If you look at the very last line that I have, I could sub in a 2 for t. But then what about the x and the y? So we're just going to continue with that. Basically, we need to sub in a 2 for the x and for the y to get those values, and then we're going to sub them in. So I'm going to show you how to do that. Okay, so now what you want to say before you sub into the formula, I would say when t is equal to 2, which is what the question was asking, then x is going to be equal to 2 squared minus 1, which is 3. And y is going to be equal to 3 times 2 cubed. 2 cubed is 8, so 3 times 8 is 24. Now you've got your x, that's the 3. You've got your y. And we had t equals 2. I'm just going to write it up here so we can remember. We're subbing in those three values into the formula. So now I say therefore dz by dt equals, and I'm subbing it into this very last line right there to get my answer. Okay, so my y is 24. My t, I do 2 times 2 because that's the t, plus, and then x is 3 minus 3 times y is 24. So we're doing 24 squared. And then, oh, pardon me, and then we're doing times 9 times, and then t was 2, so we're doing 2 squared, and there it is. All right, so continuing on, so basically here I'm going to get 24 times 4, and then plus, now it's going to be 3 minus, okay, 24 squared times 3, I'm going to get 1728 here. Okay, and then times 9 times 2 squared, that's 9 times 4, which is 36. So continuing on. Alrighty, so here we get 96 plus, and then 3 minus 1728 is minus 1725 times 36. And this is equal to minus 62004, and there's the answer. Okay, so just take it one step at a time. You definitely can do it. These questions are not too difficult. You just have to remember the formula. Okay, so I'm going to keep this video short and sweet, just with one example. The key to this section is to first do lots and lots of practice with partial derivatives, and then to remember the formula, and I've written it down for you once more. Just find your way to be able to memorize it, and you should be absolutely fine. Okay, good luck.